The snow wasn't just falling, it was attacking the city like a living thing. Each flake hit the cracked glass of the bus stop with the force of tiny bullets, creating a symphony of destruction that echoed through the empty streets of Seoul. The storm had come out of nowhere, transforming the bustling metropolis into a frozen wasteland in just 3 hours. Jin Dashu Park sat in his black Mercedes, the engine purring softly as heated leather seats kept him warm. He'd been driving home from another late night at his tech company when the storm hit. Most people had the sense to stay indoors, but something made him take the long way through the medical district. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fate. Through the chaos of snow and wind, his headlights caught something that made him slow down. A figure huddled at the bus stop, barely visible through the white curtain of the blizzard. At first, he thought it might be a homeless person, but as he got closer, he could make out the distinctive blue scrubs of a medical worker. Jin Dashu pulled his luxury sedan to the curb, the anti-lock brakes gripping the icy road perfectly. His windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle against the storm, but he could see enough. The woman was shivering so violently that her whole body seemed to vibrate. Her breath came out in desperate puffs of white vapor as she checked her phone with fingers that were clearly numb from the cold. "Hey." Jinwoo rolled down his window, immediately feeling the bite of the Arctic air. The buses stopped running. An hour ago, Nari Kim looked up from her phone, and Jinwoo could see the exhaustion carved deep into her face. Her eyes were red-rimmed, not from the cold, but from something deeper. 12 hours in the emergency room, watching people die despite her best efforts, trying to save lives while her own world fell apart on her. Her car had broken down in the hospital parking lot, the engine finally giving up after 200,000 miles of faithful service. She'd spent her last $20 on a taxi to get this far, only to find herself stranded in the worst storm Seoul had seen in decades. "I'll manage," she called back through chattering teeth. Though they both knew it was a lie. The next bus wasn't scheduled for another 2 hours, and that was assuming the storm didn't get worse. "Like hell you will. Get in." Something in Jinwoo's voice made Nari pause. It wasn't commanding or demanding like she'd expected from someone driving a car worth more than her annual salary. It was certain, almost gentle, like he genuinely cared whether a stranger lived or died. In her experience, wealthy people usually drove past without a second glance. Jinwoo stepped out of his car, and his expensive wool coat was immediately soaked by the driving snow. The storm was getting worse, and the temperature was dropping fast. He could see that the woman was beyond cold. She was entering the dangerous territory of hypothermia. Her lips had a bluish tint, and her movements were becoming sluggish. "I'm not leaving you here to freeze," he said, having to raise his voice over the howling wind. "You're coming with me." Nari studied his face in the glow of the streetlight. He was clean-cut, probably in his early 30s, with kind eyes that seemed out of place with his obvious wealth. His coat probably cost more than she made in a month. But there was something genuine about his concern. Against every instinct her mother had drilled into her about accepting rides from strangers, she made a decision. The warmth that enveloped her as she slid into the passenger seat was like stepping into heaven. The leather seats were heated. The cabin was filled with soft classical music, and for the first time in hours, she could feel her fingers again. "Thank you," she breathed, closing her eyes as sensation slowly returned to her extremities. "I thought I was going to die out there." "Jinwoo Park," he said, pulling smoothly into the sparse traffic. Even in this weather, his driving was confident and controlled. "Nari Kim. I'm a nurse at Metro General." Jinwoo finished, glancing at a hospital ID badge. "I know the place. My company donated some equipment there last year." Nari felt a moment of unease. How did he know where she worked? But before she could ask, His dashboard suddenly came alive with lights and sounds. Multiple screens flickered on, showing what looked like radar readings and communication channels. This wasn't a normal car, it was like something out of a spy movie. An urgent voice crackled through the advanced communication system. Jinwoo, we've got movement. 3 ships detected entering atmosphere. Trajectory suggests Seoul as primary target. Nari's blood turned to ice water in her veins. Ships, atmosphere. What kind of business was this man involved in? Jinwoo's knuckles went white as he gripped the steering wheel, and she could see tension spreading across his shoulders. Copy that. Tai-ho. Jinwoo responded, pressing a button on his steering wheel, initiating Protocol 7. How long do we have? 15 minutes. Maybe 20 if we're lucky. The storm might provide some cover, but they're definitely coming. Nari's mind raced. This couldn't be real. People didn't have conversations about ships entering atmosphere unless they were talking about. No, that was impossible. This had to be some kind of elaborate game or military exercise. Jinwoo, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm and the static from his radio. What's happening? What are you talking about? He met her eyes in the rearview mirror, and what she saw there made her stomach drop. This wasn't a game. This wasn't an exercise. The fear in his eyes was real, and it was contagious. Nari, he said quietly, his voice steady despite everything. The invasion just began, outside. The storm seemed to intensify, as if the very sky was preparing for war. The drive through Seoul's empty streets felt like traveling through a ghost town. Jinwoo's mansion appeared through the swirling snow like a mirage. But this wasn't any ordinary rich man's house. The building seemed to grow from the mountainside itself, or black glass and steel that reflected nothing. Security gates opened automatically as they approached, recognizing Jinwoo's car before closing behind them with a soft hiss. Nari stepped out into what looked like the entrance to a spaceship rather than a home. The walls were lined with screens, showing data she couldn't understand, and the air hummed with electricity. Her wet scrubs felt completely out of place in this high-tech environment. Welcome to my real office, Jinwoo said, leading her through corridors that belonged more in a science fiction movie than reality. The main command center took Nari's breath away. Holographic displays filled the air, showing Earth as seen from space. But these weren't normal satellite images. 3 massive objects were descending through the atmosphere, their shapes unlike anything human technology had ever produced. They moved with purpose, following precise flight paths that would bring them directly over major population centers. You're part of some kind of resistance, Nari said, and it wasn't a question. Everything she was seeing made terrible sense now. For 3 years, Jinwoo confirmed, his fingers dancing across control panels that responded to his touch like living things. Ever since we intercepted their first scout transmission, my brother was working on deep space monitoring when we picked up the signal. It wasn't random radio noise like we first thought. The main display changed, showing microscopic images that made Nari's medical training kick into high gear. She recognized cellular structures, but they were wrong somehow, too organized, too perfect. They've been seeding our atmosphere with a bioweapon, Jinwoo continued, pulling up more data, released through their scout ships over the past 6 months. Invisible, odorless, completely undetectable by our current technology. The incubation period just ended. 97% of humanity will be dead within 48 hours. Nari stared at the microscopic images, her mind racing through everything she knew about infectious diseases and biological warfare. What about the other 3%? Genetic immunity. Something in our DNA that makes us resistant to their weapon. Jinwoo turned to face her, and his expression was grave. Nari, my scanners picked up something when you got in the car. Your biological signature is different from most people. You're immune. The words hit her like a physical blow, making her stagger backward. That's impossible. I would know if I had some kind of genetic mutation. It's not a mutation. It's an evolutionary trait that shows up randomly in the population. About 3 people in every 100 have it. Jinwoo pulled up her scan results on one of the displays. Look at your cellular structure. See how it's different from a normal human baseline. Nori studied the data, her medical knowledge helping her understand what she was seeing. Her cells did look different, more complex, with additional structures she'd never seen before. The pathogen is already active in Seoul. Jinwoo said quietly, "Check the news if you don't believe me." With shaking hands, Nari grabbed the remote control and turned on the large display screen. The first channel showed a news anchor who looked pale and sweaty, struggling to read from his teleprompter. Behind him, the newsroom was in chaos. She changed channels, emergency broadcasts on every station, hospitals reporting massive casualties, people collapsing in the streets for no apparent reason, emergency services overwhelmed. The government calling for calm, while clearly having no idea what was happening. Breaking news from downtown Seoul, a reporter was saying, her voice cracking with fear. Entire city blocks have gone silent. Emergency responders are not returning from calls. The military has been deployed, but communication with forward units has been lost. Nari switched to international news. London, New York, Tokyo, Sydney. The same story everywhere. A global pandemic that had appeared overnight, killing faster than anything medical science had ever encountered. "My God," she whispered, the remote falling from her numb fingers. "It's really happening." Suddenly, every alarm in the mansion began shrieking at once. Jinwoo's screens flashed from blue to red, and automated voices began announcing warnings in multiple languages. The main display showed new contexts appearing around the building, heat signatures that moved in patterns no human would use. "They're tracking immune signatures," Jinwoo said, his voice tight with controlled panic. "The bioweapon doesn't just kill, it sends a signal when it encounters resistance. They know you're here." Through the mansion's reinforced windows, Nari saw shapes moving in the storm. At first, she thought they might be people, but as her eyes adjusted, she realized these figures were too tall, too angular. They moved with a fluid grace that was completely alien, their forms barely visible through the swirling snow. "What are those things?" she breathed. "Hunter-killers, biological constructs designed to eliminate immune individuals." Jinwoo was already moving, grabbing weapons from hidden compartments. The gun he handed her looked like nothing she'd ever seen, all curves and glowing elements that pulsed with their own inner light. "I don't know how to use this," Nari protested. "Point and squeeze the grip. The weapon will do the rest." Jinwoo was gathering equipment with practiced efficiency. "The underground gauge. There's a way out through the old subway tunnels." As they ran through the mansion's corridors, explosions began rocking the building. The lights flickered, and dust rained from the ceiling. Whatever was attacking them had serious firepower. Behind them, something roared, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of hell itself. It wasn't the cry of any Earth creature. It was alien, predatory, and getting closer. "Move," Jinwoo shouted, pushing Nari toward a hidden door that had opened in what looked like a solid wall. The sound came again, closer this time, followed by the crash of breaking glass and the screech of metal being torn apart. Whatever those things were, they were inside the mansion now. Nari ran faster than she ever had in her life, following Jinwoo through passages that led deeper into the mountain. Behind them, the sounds of destruction grew louder, mixed with alien calls that made her skin crawl. The gauge they finally reached wasn't for cars. The vehicles waiting there looked like they belonged in a space program. all sleek lines and technology that hummed with barely contained power. "Get in," Jinwoo ordered, climbing into what looked like a cross between a jet fighter and a submarine dot as Nari strapped herself in. She could hear the hunter-killers getting closer, their alien voices echoing through the tunnels. Whatever Jinwoo had gotten her into, there was no going back now. The invasion had begun, and somehow she was humanity's best hope for survival. The vehicle that lifted off from Jinwoo's hidden gouge defied everything Nari knew about physics. It looked almost human-made at first glance, but the more she studied it, the more wrong it seemed. The hull curved in impossible ways, made from materials that shifted color depending on the angle of light. The cockpit was cramped but efficient, with controls that glowed soft blue and seemed to anticipate Jinwoo's movements. Nari gripped her safety harness as they shot up through the mountain's concealed exit. Emerging into the chaos of Seoul's skyline, the storm was still raging. But now it was mixed with something far worse, the orange glow of fires burning across the city and beams of energy that cut through buildings like they were made of paper. "How long have you been preparing for this?" she shouted over the engine's high-pitched whine. The sound was unlike any aircraft she'd ever heard, more like the cry of some mechanical bird than a traditional motor. Jinwoo's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, his fingers dancing over surfaces that responded to his touch like living skin. "Since my brother died in the first biotests," he said, his voice heavy with old pain. The craft banked sharply to the right, and Nari felt her stomach lurch as they narrowly avoided a beam of pure energy that sliced through the air where they'd been just seconds before. Below them, the beam struck an entire city block, and Nari watched in horror as buildings simply vanished, turned to glass and then to nothing at all. The destruction was complete and instantaneous. Hyun-soo was a researcher at the space agency. Jinwoo continued, never taking his eyes off the chaotic sky around them. He was monitoring deep space signals when he found their transmissions. Took him months to decode even basic phrases, but what he learned. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. They'd been planning this invasion for decades, studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing biological weapons specifically designed to kill humans. Another energy beam lanced past them, close enough that Nari could feel the heat through the hull. Jinwoo rolled the craft in a maneuver that would have been impossible in any normal aircraft, diving beneath the beam and using a burning skyscraper as cover. "They killed him for it," Jinwoo said quietly. "Made it look like an accident. But I knew better. That's when I started building the resistance." Nari pressed her face to the window, watching Seoul burn below them. Her hospital was gone, reduced to smoking rubble. Her apartment building had a massive hole punched through its center. Everything she'd known, everyone she'd tried to save during those 12-hour shifts, was disappearing in alien fire. But something else was happening too, in the streets below. She could see groups of people fighting back. They weren't using normal weapons. These guns and devices sparked and crackled with the same energy she'd seen from the alien beams, but smaller, more controlled. "There are more of you," she said, amazement creeping into her voice despite the terror of their situation. "Hundreds of resistance cells, all over the world." Jinwoo grinned fiercely, and for a moment he looked less like a millionaire tech executive and more like a warrior who'd been fighting this war for years. "Humans are very good at learning from our enemies. Every piece of alien technology we've captured, we've reverse-engineered. Every transmission we've intercepted, we've decoded." Their craft suddenly shuddered violently, and warning lights bathed the cockpit in red. Through the rear display, Nari could see sleek alien fighters pursuing them, their ships moving with fluid grace that made human aircraft look clumsy by comparison. "They're faster than us," she observed. watching the gap close between their craft and the pursuers. But not smarter, Jinwoo replied, sending them into a dive that made Nari's ears pop. They think in patterns. Humans think in chaos. He proved his point by suddenly reversing thrust and spinning the craft in a tight spiral. Using the city's burning buildings as an obstacle course, the alien fighters, expecting predictable evasive maneuvers, overshot their position and crashed into each other in their confusion. "Can you handle a medkit?" Jinwoo asked through gritted teeth, and Nai noticed the blood spreading across his shoulder for the first time. "I can handle a lot more than that," she replied, already unbuckling her harness to reach him. The wound was unlike anything she'd seen in 12 years of emergency medicine. The alien weapon had burned through his jacket and into his flesh, leaving edges that were perfectly cauterized but somehow still bleeding. The tissue round the wound was changing color, taking on a greenish tint that definitely wasn't natural. "It's some kind of poison," she said, working quickly with supplies from the craft's medical kit. Her hands moved with the same steady precision that had saved lives in the emergency room. But now she was working with tools that seemed to anticipate what she needed. Jinwoo piloted them through the burning city with one hand while she worked, his face pale but determined. Buildings flashed past their windows, some intact, others reduced to skeletal frames by alien weapons. In the distance, the massive alien motherships hung in the sky like dark clouds, raining destruction on everything below. "The infection is spreading," Nari said, watching the green discoloration creep up Jinwoo's arm. "I need to stop it before it reaches your heart." She grabbed what looked like a small scanner from the medical kit. The device hummed against Jinwoo's skin, and a holographic display showed her exactly what the alien toxin was doing to his body. It was trying to rewrite his cellular structure, turning his own immune system against him. "Clever," she muttered, selecting a treatment that looked like it might work, but not clever enough. The antidote went to work immediately, and Nari watched with satisfaction as the green discoloration began to recede. Jinwoo's color improved, and his piloting became steadier. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked, amazement clear in his voice. "You're not the only one who's been preparing," Nari replied with a small smile. "I've been seeing patients with strange symptoms for months now, symptoms that didn't match any known disease. I thought it was just stress from overwork. But now you were seeing the early effects of their bioweapon testing." Jinwoo finished. Ahead of them, what looked like a simple maintenance tunnel entrance appeared in the side of a mountain. But as they approached, Nari could see that the opening was much larger than it appeared, hidden by some kind of optical illusion. "Home base," Jinwoo announced, guiding their craft through the concealed entrance. The tunnel they entered was massive, carved from living rock, but lined with the same impossible materials as their ship. Other craft were docked along the wall, some that looked human-built, others that were clearly captured alien technology, and still others that seemed to be a hybrid of both. "Welcome to the real war," Jinwoo said as they settled onto a landing platform. Nari looked round at the bustling activity in the hidden base. People in military gear worked alongside scientists in lab coats, all of them focused on weapons and equipment that belonged in science fiction rather than reality. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt something that might have been hope. The hidden entrance led to something that took Nari's breath away. What had looked like a simple maintenance tunnel opened into a vast underground city that stretched as far as she could see. The Resistance base wasn't just a hideout, it was a complete civilization carved from the rock. Beneath Seoul, with living quarters, workshops, laboratories, and command centers all connected by tunnels that hummed with activity. Thousands of people moved through the corridors with purpose. These were the 3% who had survived the alien bioweapon. They'd been busy. Children who should have been in school were learning to operate alien technology. Elderly people who should have been retired were teaching combat tactics. Everyone had a role in humanity's desperate fight for survival. Nari followed Jinwoo through the main corridor, trying to take in everything at once. The walls were lined with screens showing the surface world soul burning, alien ships patrolling the skies, and the scattered resistance cells still fighting above ground. But down here, hope was still alive. How long has this place existed? She asked, watching a group of teenagers working on what looked like captured alien weapons. We started building 3 years ago, Jinwoo replied, leading her toward the medical section. My brother's research showed us exactly what was coming. We had time to prepare, to find others like us, to build something that could survive. The medical bay was a marvel of human ingenuity mixed with alien technology. Nari moved through makeshift medical stations where doctors and nurses worked frantically to treat injuries she'd never see. And before, burns from alien energy weapons left perfectly geometric patterns on human skin. Wounds from their projectile weapons seemed to resist normal healing. Victims of partial bioweapon exposure showed symptoms that changed by the hour. You're adapting fast, said Mi Youngly. Approaching from across the medical bay, she was older than Nari, maybe 45. With the confident bearing of someone who'd been in charge during countless emergencies. Most people take weeks to accept what's happening up there. Nari looked up from the child she was examining, a little girl whose parents hadn't been immune, but who had somehow survived the initial bioweapon release. I've seen enough death to know when to fight it, she replied, checking the girl's vital signs with equipment that seemed to read her thoughts as much as her biology. The child was stable but traumatized. She hadn't spoken since the resistance fighters found her hiding in the ruins of her apartment building. Nari made a mental note to check on her later, once the immediate medical crisis was under control. Across the base, she could see Jinwoo working with Taihoshin and their technical team. They'd gathered around a holographic display showing the internal structure of captured alien technology. The devices they were studying pulsed with organic light, more like living organs than machines. The aliens made one crucial mistake, Jinwoo was explaining to the assembled resistance leaders. His voice carried clearly across the command center, designed with acoustics that let everyone hear important discussions. They assumed their bioweapon would eliminate all resistance. They didn't plan for survivors, and they certainly didn't expect us to fight back. Dr. Kang Soon-ho, the base's chief scientist, manipulated the holographic display to show the alien technology from different angles. Their entire approach is biological rather than mechanical. Everything they build grows rather than being manufactured. It adapts, learns, evolves in real time. But that also makes it vulnerable. Jinwoo continued, and Nari found herself listening intently while still treating patients. Biological systems can be infected, poisoned, turned against themselves. Nari looked up from her work, understanding beginning to dawn. Vulnerable how? Jinwoo met her eyes across the busy command center. They've never faced anything like human medicine. Their biology is completely uniform. Every member of their species is essentially identical. Ours isn't. Human genetic diversity is our greatest strength. The implications hit Nari like a physical blow. In 12 years of emergency medicine, she'd treated thousands of different conditions, learned to adapt to countless variables in human biology. The aliens, for all their advanced technology, had never encountered that kind of biological chaos. I need to see their biosamples, she said, already moving toward the laboratory section. What she found there made her heart race with possibility rather than fear. The alien pathogen was incredibly sophisticated. more complex than any virus or bacteria she'd studied, but it was also narrow in its focus, designed for a single biological outcome against a uniform target. It had never been tested against human medical intervention. I can modify this, she told the assembled team, her excitement growing as she studied the data. Their weapon is designed to rewrite human cellular structure, but it follows predictable patterns if I can introduce controlled mutations, random elements that their pathogen can't adapt to. Mia moved closer, studying the same displays. You're talking about turning their own weapon against them. Exactly. Nari was already pulling up human genetic databases, cross-referencing the alien pathogen structure with human immune responses. Their bioweapon is like a key designed to open one specific lock. But human biology isn't one lock, it's thousands of different locks, all constantly changing. It's dangerous. Mi Young warned, understanding the implications. One mistake in the modification and you could create something that kills the remaining immune population. One mistake and we're all dead anyway, Nari replied, her hands already moving over the laboratory controls. The alien technology responded to her touch, somehow understanding her intent, even though she'd never used anything like it before. But if this works, we can create a counter-pathogen that uses their own biological systems against them. The laboratory fell silent except for the hum of alien machinery. Everyone understood what she was proposing, using humanity's greatest weakness, their biological diversity, as their ultimate weapon. Jinwoo approached, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. What do you need? Nari looked up at the faces surrounding her: doctors, scientists, soldiers, civilians who'd lost everything but refused to give up. These were the people who would determine whether humanity survived or died. Access to their biolab, she said quietly, the main facility where they're manufacturing the pathogen. I need to introduce the counteragent directly into their production system. The room fell completely silent. Through the base's communication system, they could hear reports from the surface: more cities falling, more resistance cells going silent. The alien ships spreading their biological weapons across the globe. That's a suicide mission, Taiho said quietly, voicing what everyone was thinking. Their biolab is in the center of their main ship. It's defended by thousands of their hunter-killer units. Nari met Jinwoo's eyes, seeing her own determination reflected there. Round them, the underground city continued its desperate work, humanity's last hope hidden beneath the ruins of Seoul. Then we better make it count, she said. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The alien biofacility rose from the Han River like something born from humanity's worst nightmares. It wasn't built, it had grown, emerging from the water over the past 24 hours like a massive organic tumor. The structure pulsed with its own heartbeat, veins of bioluminescent fluid running through walls that breathed and contracted. Tentacle-like appendages reached into the sky, drawing in Earth's atmosphere and transforming it into something poisonous to human life. Nari crouched in the stolen alien scoutship, watching the facility through eyes that had seen too much death. In the past day, the immunity that had saved her life now made her invisible to the alien senses. Their technology simply couldn't detect someone their bioweapon couldn't kill. Remember, Jinwoo's voice came through her earpiece as he piloted their commandeered craft in wide circles round the facility. You have maybe 30 minutes before their systems adapt to recognize your presence. Get in, upload the counter-pathogen, and get out. I'm in, Nari whispered into her comm as she approached the facility's main entrance. The security field felt like walking through warm honey. But it parted round her without resistance. Her immunity signature registered as already dead to their senses, making her effectively invisible. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very thing that made her valuable to the resistance also made her the perfect weapon against the aliens inside. The facility was a maze of biomechanical systems that defied human understanding. Living walls, pulsed with arterial rhythms, and the air itself seemed thick with microscopic machinery. Production chambers the size of swimming pools bubbled with the pathogen that had killed billions of people. Organic pipes carried the deadly mixture throughout the facility, preparing to distribute it to the remaining human population centers. But Nari saw something else that made her heart race with possibility the aliens' fatal arrogance. Their entire production system was centralized, controlled by a single biological brain that coordinated everything. They'd never imagined their weapon could be turned against them. So they'd built new safeguards into their own systems, working with equipment that responded to bioelectric fields rather than mechanical controls. Nari began her modifications. The alien interface felt strange under her hands, warm and slightly sticky, but her medical training helped her understand its biological logic. Every cell in the facility was connected to every other cell. Just like a human body, her counterpathogen was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to fight the alien bioweapon directly, she was teaching it to target the alien's own uniform biology. Their greatest strength, the complete genetic similarity of their species, would become their ultimate weakness. Nari, you've got company. Jinwoo's voice crackled through static as explosions echoed from somewhere above them. She looked up from her work to see the facility's main entrance dilating open like a massive eye. Through it came Elia and bio-warriors towering, creatures that stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies a horrifying fusion of muscle, chitin, and mechanical components. They moved with predatory grace, but something was wrong with their coordination. They kept stopping, tilting their heads as if listening to something only they could hear. Nari realized they were confused by her immunity signature. To their senses, she was already dead, a ghost haunting their facility. Their programming didn't know how to respond to something that shouldn't exist. Her hands never stopped working on the counterpathogen. The modification was almost complete, the alien biointerface showing her progress through colors that shifted from deep red to brilliant green. Round her, the facility's systems hummed with increasing urgency as they tried to understand what was happening to their central control node. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. Jinwoo urged through the calm as more explosions rocked the facility. Their main ships are converging on your position. Nari could hear the bio-warriors getting closer, their chitting communication growing more agitated. But the counterpathogen was ready. She activated the release mechanism, and throughout the facility, thousands of vents opened simultaneously. Her modified pathogen began spreading through the alien network like wildfire through dry grass. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The bio-warriors stumbled, their perfect coordination breaking down as the counterpathogen rewrote their cellular programming. Their uniform biology, which had made them so efficient as a species, left them completely vulnerable to a weapon designed specifically for genetic conformity. It's working, Nari breathed, watching through the facility's organic windows as alien ships began falling from the sky over Seoul. But the facility itself was dying round her. Biomechanical systems shut down in cascading failures as the counterpathogen spread through their networks. The walls began to collapse, organic structures dissolving as their cellular bonds broke apart. The massive production chambers cracked open, spilling their deadly contents harmlessly into the Han River where the counterpathogen neutralized them instantly. Nari ran for the extraction point as the building came apart around her, dodging falling chunks of biomechanical debris and streams of alien fluid that hissed when they hit the floor. The facility's death throes were violent and chaotic, like a massive organism having a seizure. Behind her, she could hear the bio-warriors collapsing, their bodies unable to maintain cohesion as the counterpathogen turned their own immune systems against them. What had taken humanity's greatest medical minds years to understand? The aliens had never considered that biological weapons could be a double-edged sword. Jinwu's craft appeared through the smoke and chaos. Its captured alien, weapons blazing as he cleared a path through the facility's collapsing superstructure. The ship's hull was scorched and dented from fighting his way through the alien defenses. But he'd made it. "Jump!" he shouted over the roar of destruction. Nari leaped from the facility's collapsing platform into the open cabin of their ship, landing hard but alive. As they pulled away from the dying structure, she watched through the rear displays as the entire biolab dissolved into the river, taking the aliens' manufacturing capability with it. But the real victory was happening on a global scale. Through their communication systems, reports were flooding in from resistance cells around the world. The counterpathogen was spreading through alien networks faster than they could contain it. Their ships were falling silent, their bio-warriors collapsing, their entire invasion force dying from their own weapon turned against them. "We did it," Jinwu said, hardly believing the words even as he spoke them. Nari looked out at Seoul below them, where survivors were beginning to emerge from hiding places throughout the city. The alien ships that had been raining death from above were now crashing into empty buildings, their crews dead from their own bioweapon. The city was scarred and wounded, but it was still standing. Humanity was still standing. "The storm's over," Nari said softly, watching the last alien ship spiral into the Han River. Jinwu reached over and took her hand, his fingers warm and reassuringly human after everything they'd been through. "And we're still here." In the distance, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, its light illuminating a world that had faced extinction and survived. Humanity had won not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the very qualities that made them human: adaptability, compassion, and the absolute refusal to give up on each other. The 3% who had survived the initial bioweapon attack began the long work of rebuilding their world. But they did it with the knowledge that when faced with impossible odds, human ingenuity and determination could overcome any enemy. On the streets below, people were helping each other, sharing food and shelter, caring for the wounded and the lost. It was the same spirit that had driven Nari to work 12-hour shifts in the emergency room, the same determination that had led Jinwu to build a resistance movement from nothing. The aliens had underestimated humanity's greatest weapon there: refusal to abandon hope, even in the darkest hour, the end.